This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, the wind and pollen of the warm weather here in New Jersey, attempting to kill me one breath at a time. This week, I'm joined by Paul Jaisley.
Hello, humanoids.
And host of the Next Issue podcast, the one and only Danny.
At least I'm not the 50 mosquitoes that just went at me hard yesterday. Oh my God. It was a mistake to go outside.
I'll be speaking a different tune in another month. So I'll come back and challenge you again. But nonetheless, we are here to talk about comic books. We're doing this thing called I Read Comic Books live on twitch.tv. If you're not here watching live, what are you doing with your time? You should have been here Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern. I mean, that's when we do these things every other month. Make sure that you're subscribed, get notified when we do these things. But nonetheless, we're here to talk about comic books. And more importantly, we are here to talk about comic books that meet the Goodreads theme of the month for our wonderful, hugely popular Goodreads group. And this month we are talking about creators who are people of color. So specifically, Paul, Danny, and myself, we all read books that featured people that meet this theme. So we're going to be talking about them in a second. And in fact, let's just jump right in. I got two legally mandated questions that I need to ask. And that's, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Danny.
Well, Mike, after the Mosquito Fest, I did this weekend. This weekend I was actually inside a lot. It was a mistake to go outside in between. But I had two different tournaments for my Star Wars Destiny or Star Wars Unlimited game.
Nice.
I played. I did not win. I missed the top cut in the last one yesterday, and then this morning I went, but I knew I was going to be on the show, so I didn't register. I just went to hang out for a little bit, get some video and all that. But it was really fun. I love going to the local game shop and just like hanging out and play some cards. You know, it's a lot of, other than reading comic books at home. That's kind of the other thing I do. So either a bunch of people or no people. Like there's no in between with me.
Yeah. Wait, so at these tournaments, is there like a cash reward? Is there like a prize that you can win at the end of this tournament?
They do promos. So there are these are store showdowns. They have specific promos that you can only get at these events. Everybody that signs up gets one card, but the more you make it, you get like other cards and promos and stuff. Our local shops are wonderful. This is my local shop / comic book store. So
nice.
They had a tournament. Now, unfortunately, this morning we did receive the notice that they were broken into, and it just sucks. Like,
no shit.
Yeah, man, that news really sucks. So I'll probably stop by to see him sometime during the week. Like small businesses, they are living on a razor's edge. So like whenever stuff like that happens, but yeah, they're very resilient. They've been around for a little while now. So hopefully they can bounce back from this. And I'll go get more comic books from them, like I did this week, where I picked up Doom #1.
Nice.
For the Twitch audience, you're seeing this live. For everyone else, you can go check out on Patreon when we put up the video version of the episode. This has a story by Sanford Green and Jonathan Hickman, with art and colors by Sanford Green, additional colors by Rachel Rosenberg, and letters by Joe Caramagna. This could be considered to me like the last Doctor Doom story ever told. Like it just has that vibe to it. It's an oversized issue. Yeah.
Okay.
After the awakening of Galactus, he sets on a rampage across the universe, and Doom may be the only one with a hope to stop him and save the universe. Like, I could stop right there. I won't, but I could, and I feel like that's a good pitch, right?
I mean, Doctor Doom versus Galactus. I mean, that's pretty sick, right?
Yeah. Now, you may know Sanford Green from the Eisner Award-winning series Bitter Root. If you don't, go check out Bitter Root. It's a fantastic book. And then, of course, you probably heard the name Jonathan Hickman because we say that a lot in the podcast as well.
Yeah.
When this book was announced a few months ago for the previews, I was very excited. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know it was going to be a one-shot either. That probably was the only disappointing part of this, that it wasn't going to be like a mini-series or an ongoing. But man, oh man, they do so much in such a small amount of time. It's just really, really cool. I absolutely love the book. It really feels like the creators wanted to do kind of like a love letter to the character of Doctor Doom. And I'm a big fan of like the characters that are interacting here, mainly Doctor Doom and Valeria, who I love that relationship because it's like I'm gonna be the godfather to my worst enemy's daughter. Like
Yeah.
that's just a
Great.
baller move. And then of course Valeria is super smart, so I think Doom not only appreciates her, but he respects her as just like because of her intellect, and he probably thinks more highly of her than Reed, right? Which
Sure.
I'm probably on that page as well. So um, it they managed to put in so many different aspects of the Marvel universe, but it's all done very approachable. Like this feels to me like anybody that's, as long as you kind of know who Doctor Doom is. Like if you ever, for whatever reason, stumbled into one of the Fantastic Four movies from the 2000s and you heard, oh, that's Doctor Doom, like you could probably read this and you'll be all right. Uh, they show you so much, but they do it in a way that you don't need to have like deep lore knowledge, right? So that's really cool. I highly recommend this for new readers because it really feels like it distills like the best parts of the Doom character. Not every aspect of him, but just like some of the more interesting parts, at least to me. And it really highlights the flexibility of a character like Doctor Doom. He's not just a villain, right? He's a ruthless dictator, but he's also a scientist, a sorcerer, a world traveling. He's a godfather to a small child.
Yeah.
So
all redeemable things, totally.
right.
Yeah, that makes all the bad stuff he does just go away. That's fine.
Yeah, I think the best compliment I'll give this book is that it feels like one of those big event books without you having to read 30 tie-ins. It's just like a really solid standalone story. It could have been longer for sure. It could have. I don't think it could have been shorter. I think they really just compressed it down as much as they could for this one shot. But and of course, like just look at the cover. Like, oh my goodness,
Hell yeah.
And then you get
It does look really cool. I will say that. Like, I almost picked it up at the shop. Oh no, the shop didn't have any. I almost picked it up digitally because I really wanted to read it, but I'll wait for it to come out on Marvel Unlimited.
There's some really nice sketches in the back as well by Sanford Green for the characters. So like,
awesome.
Yeah, I think I don't usually like paying $7 for a comic book, but this one I really feel like I got my money's worth. I feel like I should go give him an extra $1 or something.
This is like an 80-page book though, right?
It's around 66 and then all the back matter.
okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely there. So but that's me. Paul, what about you? How have you been? How have comic books been?
I'm good. I did pick up that Doom issue. I have not read it yet, so I'm very excited after your endorsement there.
Paul, really quick before you jump in, I'm going to
Yes.
give the chance to folks watching live on Twitch. If you want to get a shout out on this week's show, drop what you're reading next as the top of your pile. Whatever book you're reading next, comic, it could be a new, old, whatever book that you're reading next in the chat. I'll make sure to shout you out when we get to that segment in the show. But Paul, go ahead. How have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been good. Here in West Michigan, we're having the first glimpses of summer. I hit the upper 80s today, which normally I'm not a fan of, but today was nice. Ask me again in July when it's like 80 every day. I have a different story, but like, today was nice. Just like put in my little short shorts and go for a long walk. Like it was wonderful. So, in terms of comics, I've been like so far behind on reading my regular monthly comics because of C2E2, because of just being busy. Just like I have a huge stack of comics. I'm slowly making a dent in them. So I was able to read a few things over the past week that I really enjoyed. I have two books I want to mention. I'll talk them both pretty briefly here. The one that I know for sure fits the theme for this episode is the Boy Wonder #1 by Junie Ba and Chris O'Halloran with letters by Aditya Bidikar. This is a Black Label series that DC is doing, and like the title suggests, it is a Robin story. So specifically Damian Wayne, and this is great. So if you know Junie Ba, they're best known for doing Monkey Man over at Image. Very distinctive artwork. It's kind of like it reminds me of Chris Samnee and Mike Mignola kind of at the same time. Like it's like, this expressive, like a lot of heavily spotted blacks, this like thick ink line, but a little more expressive than Mike Mignola sometimes. And it has a sense of like this almost like folk art sort of, folk tale sort of like approach to it. And that's kind of what this issue is. It's basically Damian telling his origin story through the lens of a folk tale. He's talking about his dad, Batman, being the king and like his brothers being princes, and like it's him relating his history. So if you're familiar with Robin as a character or Damian Wayne as a character, it's all familiar stuff, but it's kind of told through that interesting lens. And I really love it when superhero comics use, quote unquote, unconventional artwork. Like I love it when you have a superhero story that is like not the standard superhero house style.
Yeah.
And this is
Right,
really is that
right.
kind of story. Like I understand it's a Black Label book, so it feels like out of continuity, but like it's a really beautiful looking book, amazing colors, amazing artwork, and a glimpse of a character that I think is a really interesting character. I think Damien's always been a fascinating character. So they have kind of like a condensed origin story for him is a really cool way to do this. So like perfect creator for that story, I think, in my opinion. Junie Ba doing Boy Wonder #1. I don't know how many issues it is. I think it's a miniseries, but really love the first issue. But
it looks gorgeous. Looking at Junie Ba's art for this, I was looking at some preview pages just now. Am I picking up Boy Wonder #1 next time I go to the shop?
I think you might have to.
I might.
One thing Junie Ba does really well is do like these facial expressions. Like you don't see Damien being very expressive in the normal timeline or continuity.
Sure.
And there's like a whole motif or a theme of like these masks that keep kind of popping up, and it feels like I was thinking it was like Court of Owls stuff. I don't know. You can kind of see it on the cover, but it's definitely a new approach to Damien. We don't get to be in his head much usually, and like unless it's like his own book. And I just kind of really I like knowing what he thinks because it's usually very different from what he actually says to people, right? He puts on this like stoic persona because he was raised by the League of Assassins, so like you kind of have to have a hard exterior. But if you've seen the Harley Quinn show, you know that boy is just all gooey in the center. So
yeah.
Very cool stuff. I love it. Yeah. I know Junie Ba's art isn't for everyone, and that might be a deterrent for some, but I really love it.
Yeah. Those people are wrong. I'm just going to say that.
I think for me, that's what sold the book. Like, I mean, I like Robin as a character, but like seeing the artwork and knowing that name, Junie Ba, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to buy that, sight unseen. Yeah. So I'm glad I did. Another book I have to mention very briefly because it might be the best Batman comic I've read all year is Batman Dylan Dog, 3-issue miniseries that just wrapped up this week. Written by Roberto Recchioni, art by Gigi Caviago and Werther Deladera, and colors by Giovanni Nero. This is a book that I almost didn't pick up because I don't know who Dylan Dog is. I know that's what you're asking. Who the fuck is Dylan Dog? Right?
That's what I'm asking for.
And I kind of had to look it up. So the thing is, the book gives you enough context to understand the character. But for the background, Dylan Dog is an Italian comic book character created in the mid-'80s by Tiziano Scavalli. He's kind of like a cult hero. He appeared in an Italian horror comic, and his gimmick is that he's a self-described nightmare investigator, basically a supernatural private detective, right? Imagine John Constantine without the alcohol problem. That's basically Dylan Dog.
Okay.
He's kind of like a libertine. He's like very like laissez-faire, like laid back, kind of sloppy. So of course, teaming up with Batman, it's like, two flavors that shouldn't work together and that somehow it works. The whole series is based on the idea that the Joker teams up with Dylan Dog's arch nemesis, Dr. Zabaris, and Batman has to go to London to track the Joker down to do this. And what you need to know, I mean, that's all background. The book itself is just so much fun. If you just want like a good supernatural horror tinged Batman story with a lot of like fun humor, great action sequences, it's such a fun book. And it's a bummer that I feel a lot of people will sleep on it because they don't know who Dylan Dog is. Like they won't be like, I don't know who that is. I won't pick it up. But I mean, for me, it was like such a fun Batman story. You get to see Batman interact with somebody who's so different from him. Because it's a supernatural story, there's some deep cut B and C list DC characters that show up in issue 2, which is a treat for me. And
do Knight and Squire show up? Because I feel like they have to, right?
Weirdly enough, they don't because they're in London, but they don't show up. But
okay.
But the artwork is amazing. Gigi Cavanago and Werther Deladera, their artwork is just like, the pencil reminds me of like Klaus Jansson's work in the 80s in the Batman Gothic storyline. But like the page layouts, the action sequences, and the use of color by Giovanni Nero reminds me of Greg Smallwood's Human Target book. Like it's a beautiful looking book. Like it's amazing. Some of the action sequences are like stunning in this.
Excuse me? That's okay. That is high praise, Paul. I'm just saying.
I'm saying like I did not know what to expect when I picked this book up. And I will say this, I know the trade is coming out in a few months, go to your shop and see if the single issues, because the issues are all $4.99, but the first 2 issues are 80 pages and the third issue is 60 pages. So you're basically getting a whole trade for $15 if you find the single issues. So
dude, that's bonkers.
Because I feel like they knew no one was going to buy it, so they priced it at that level. So that's why
what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that DC understands that their pricing is bullshit. Marvel and DC understand this, and yet they still choose to price their books where they do. Okay, that's fine.
We can charge $4.99 for an 80-page comic. We can.
I could even imagine that the Italian publisher that they teamed up to do with this, they're like, you can't charge too much for this book. There's it has to be part of the deal, right?
Maybe.
I've also read the first issue, Paul. I really enjoyed it. Like you, I had to Google Dylan Dog, and when I found out that Brandon Routh did a movie for Dylan Dog like in 2010, I was like, well, I have to put this on the watch list.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that'll end up on the IRCB Movie Club.
All right, here we were talking about this before we recorded it. Paul, we were talking about doing a Punish Us month. What if we also slip Dylan Dog in there? It's not going to win, but it could be fun.
Yeah. It would be fun. I do want to see it now after reading this comic. I'm very curious.
Okay.
I had to make sure I had a moment to talk about this book on the show because I need people to know about this book. If you want just like a non-continuity, standalone, supernatural Batman comic, that's very fun. Like the dialogue between Dylan Dog and Batman is fantastic. There's one of my favorite moments is there like Dylan Dog's always surprised by Batman's gadgets. Like they're in the back, he's in the Batmobile. It's like, what is this? Like, oh, it's my car. Like, of course. And like, there's a thing where like they have to go to Scotland when they're in London. It's like, it's going to take too long in your car. And Batman's like, don't worry, we're not taking the car. And it shows like the bat wing, like the bat plane taking off. And Dylan Dog's like, he's like, you're always prepared for everything, aren't you? And Batman says, yes, that's why I'm still alive. And like that moment is just so great because like, you're making fun of Batman being prepared for everything, but it fits the character so well, his response. So
right.
I was totally blown away by this book. So I think, again, go to your local shop, see if they have the single issues and pick it up. It's got my guarantee. So there you go.
Wow.
And if you like something Skilling the Children, Werther Lildera that does the art for that. So like, you already know what the flavors. You already know what kind of supernatural art you're gonna get. At least partly in this book. I think Gigi Kavanagh does the flashbacks. To the Joker stuff, and I think Lildera does like the main part of the story.
Sure,
it's what I remember from my investigation. I also put on my detective hat when talking about comics because they make it very complicated sometimes to figure out all the little nooks and crannies.
For sure. There you
go. Well, let me talk about what I've been up to and comics I've been reading. I too, like Paul, I feel like since C2E2, my life has been just a whirlwind of like crazy stuff. I was going to talk about some of those books that came out from Jeff Johns over at Image because I'm like weirdly into them, especially the latest array of number ones that came out. But like, I think I need to think about them more, and I need to actually I think I need to read all of them in order to like fully comprehend what's going on over that universe. But instead, I'm going to talk about a book that I read recently. I got caught up on. This is The Last Mermaid, number 2 and 3. This is from Image Comics, written by Derek Kirk Kim, illustrated by Derek Kirk Kim. I think the entire book is done by Derek Kirk Kim. And The Last Mermaid is a story about a mermaid in a water-filled mech suit traveling through the desert with her pet axolotl in search of water or something else. I think you need to just read the book to find out because the first issue is super well done. Like I was immediately hooked after I first read just the first dozen pages, let alone the first, I think it was like a 48 page number 1 is really, really good. And then 2 and 3 answer all the questions that I had at the end of number 1. Like a good number 1 from Image. I think if you've been reading comics for a long time, you know that Image number 1s usually just end with like a big old hook right in the middle of your cheek. So you have to come back next month, or at least a good number 1 does. And this series did exactly that. And so reading numbers 2 and 3, I was very excited, especially after I got a chance to talk with Derek at C2E2, like talking about, how awesome the book was. Unfortunately, I talked to them on Sunday. And so I missed out on all the cool stuff that they had on their booth, which I was so happy to see that he was sold out of pretty much everything that he brought. That is the best feeling in the world, that a creator that is so good and doing such a fun little book sold out of everything. That's exactly what you want to see, right? But the thing that really intrigued me was this isn't just some short-lived series. Kim is planning to take this book up to 25 or 30 issues is the plan, which is very exciting, multiple trades. And I think that that's a very ambitious goal for a semi-newer creator, especially over at Image. I think they've done some work in the past on some graphic novels and some other things, but like this is their first Image series. And the fact that Image is like, hell yes, let's turn this into like a longer series is very, very exciting for me, because the art in this book is unbelievably stunning. Like I thought the first issue looked pretty. You can see Derek Kirk Kim just flex in these issues 2 and 3 as he introduces these underwater monsters and all these other things that I didn't think this series was going to go in the direction of. Like there's a bit more violence and a bit more excitement than I was expecting, because this does feel like kind of like a PG era book, and now it's more PG-13, but it's still friendly towards, I don't know, I feel it would feel comfortable giving this to like a 12-year-old and say like, hey, read this book. But I, as an adult, am also enjoying it because it's just a cool looking book. It reads really, really easily. And it has just this pacing that feels very well thought out. And I think that comes from Kim's background in animation. They've worked on a lot of different things in the past in like studios, working for various animation companies. So like they understand how a plot is supposed to go over a longer form story. So this series feels very well paced. We get, at the end of issue 3, we get a big reveal of something that happens, which was maybe the most exciting thing. Again, 3 issues in, we're getting these huge hooks at the end of the volume or the issues that are keeping me coming back. And I'm so pumped to read this book every single month. So if you haven't gotten a chance yet, go read The Last Mermaid #1. And then when you're addicted, go read 2 and 3 and put this on your pull list. Like this book deserves every piece of love and every piece of praise that it's been getting. And I wholly sign off on this book. Like I can't wait for it to get collected. I really need to go back and actually buy those single issues. They're in these slightly smaller than normal magazine format size, but I'm comfy with that because it allows the art to just really, really shine. It's funny. I was at C2E2. I got sucked in. I bought Spectrograph #1. I don't want to hear it from anybody. Okay. I bought a distillery book, because I needed to see Christian Ward's art. And I understand why the book is the shape that it is. They're doing things just like the Black Label books. I get it. It doesn't mean that I'm not upset about it still. I don't know where the fuck to put these books, but it does look cool. Like, I can't argue with that. Is that enough of a reason for me to have all my books in this weird format? I don't know. But I at least bought #1. I was like, all right.
They got
Let's just see what this is all about.
They got you.
Or no, I bought this. Sorry, I didn't buy this at C2E2. I bought this at another comic book shop. They actually gave me a bag and board for this, which I was very appreciative of, because I was like, guys, what am I going to do with this? And they're like, don't worry. It's free. You've shopped with us before. We know you. Here's a free bag and board. I was like, I love you. I wish that I could shop at you every single week, but you are an hour and a half away, and that just sucks. But anyways, so I still recommend The Last Mermaid. It's really, really good. If you get a chance to read it, you're gonna have a really good time.
Yeah.
It feels like an animated movie put to page in all of the right ways, in all of the best ways.
Okay.
Danny, I don't know. Did you get a chance to read this book?
I did. Yeah, I read the first one, and Mike, I mean, you pretty much nailed everything. I think some people may be a little bit scared because of that not weird. It's just a format that's different.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be weird. And I agree. Like, I don't know where to put this. What I'm doing with a lot of these oversized books is like, I'm buying the first one and then I'm just going to trades after that.
Sure.
I want one thing so I can be able to carry it to a convention and get it signed, but I don't want to carry a trade. So, but the book itself, it's just really fun world building. There's not a lot of words, but there's still a lot of story happening in the page, which is, I think that's a skill that takes a lot of talent to make sure that you feel like something's happening without like actual dialogue telling you what is happening, right? A lot of superhero comics are like, oh, I need to put everything that's happening on the page. But yeah, this doesn't do that. I will say I'm not a fan of axolotls. Like, they just kind of weird me out.
What?
I know.
Fair point.
They weird me out. They're like fantasy creatures come to life in the real world.
Yeah, it's awesome. They're basically just living Pokemon, Danny.
No.
Come on.
I think Pokemon would be the scariest thing if they were in the real world. I've seen those renderings of real life Pokemon. They don't look as friendly.
No.
But yeah, highly recommend it. I need to catch up on The Last Mermaid. So I'll definitely do that as soon as I can. There's too many comics to read, as you can. This is my top of the pile over here. It keeps growing.
Well,
Jeez.
perfect segue. Every week on I Read Comic Books, we talk about books that we're going to be reading next, whether they're new or old or just something we're trying to get off of our shelves. So before we get into that, I do want to shout out some of the folks that are hanging out with us from our Discord, as well as some of the folks hanging out with us live here on Twitch, what they're going to be reading next. Avocado Kenobi is going to be reading Ice Cream Man number 39. Nick and I made that happen. I'm very proud of that we got another person into reading Ice Cream Man. If you're curious, God help you, but go read all 9 volumes of Ice Cream Man and then go listen to the 9 episodes where Nick and I try to pull our brains out into audio form in order to try to analyze that series. It's very, very fun. And I'm glad that someone else is reading that series. Paul G is going to be reading Sunshine by Jarrett J. Krasoska. CK is going to be reading Transitions by Elodie Durand. And Toad 1 is going to be reading Batman Failsafe, or is currently reading Batman Failsafe. I also want to shout out Paul G, who is like wrapping up our Goodreads reading challenge, like in the month of May. This was supposed to be a year-long thing, and Paul has just knocked it out.
Wow.
Outside of the monthly theme books, but like that is incredible. So like hats off to you, Paul. That's amazing. But anyways, let's dive in and talk about what books we're going to be reading next. So I'm going to kick things back over to Danny. What is on the top of your pile?
Well, as I mentioned, what isn't on the top of my pile is it's easier to talk about.
Sure.
Like, look, did I want to put Blood Hunt number 2 this week? Yeah, because Marvel's doing a big summer event, and I'm all in for it. Or did I want the exciting finale of Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong in number 7? Because why not? Or even the last issue of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, House of the Blood Axe. I wanted to talk about all those, but I won't.
Danny, I just, dude, the books that you read are bonkers to me. Like, I love you so much, man. I'm just like, those were up for running, and you chose this other book. That's what that's crazy. That's crazy, man.
It's like when you go to like, I don't know if you guys have been to a Vegas buffet, and they have food from all over the world, and I just like, I want to try everything, and I know I'm not gonna like everything, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go back and get my a nice steak or something because I know I'll like that for sure. My steak this week is Nightwing 114,
of course,
from DC Comics. This is gonna be written by Tom Taylor with art by Bruno Redondo, colors by Adriano Lucas, and letters by Wes Abbott. I think these guys were just nominated for another Eisner for this series. If I'm not mistaken, this week. So that's how you know it's good, because some corporation tells you that the comics are good.
Right.
But this will begin the Fallen Grayson storyline, which I think it's wrapping up their run. So this is the first time, this series, since Tom Taylor took over, is the first time I've been pulling Nightwing ever. Like, I've read other Nightwing stories, but I've never actually pulled a single issues. I read them month to month, and I really not every arc hits like 100%, but like for the most part, it's very consistent. It's a very, very well put together book. They have a really nice rotation of artists that all feel not the same as Bruno Redondo, but you get the same kind of vibes from it. So it never feels too out of the norm. But here we will see the culmination of Heartless, who is the main villain that we've been seeing all throughout the run, who's been sabotaging Nightwing as he reaches, so what he did to Nightwing is that Nightwing is now afraid of heights. And obviously being Nightwing, like, that really puts you in, it's a problem for sure. He's now on the search to not only figure out how to stop Heartless, but how to get over this. Relatable content for sure. Like, who hasn't had to just get over a fear and get stuff done, right? So I really like it. I'm looking forward to figuring out how this arc closes out. I'll be sad to see them move on to a different book, but I think Nightwing has had his time in the light, which this arc's been all about, leaping into the light, and it just the difference between how Nightwing acts in this book and Batman, that's my favorite part, because they're so different. Like, Bruce appreciates Nightwing, that he took his own road and he's doing his own thing. He's currently leading the Titans, who are now the Justice League, because the Justice League is not around at the moment. That might change with this whole absolute power thing, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I love this series. What whether it's just reading this series or reading every book that Nightwing's on, or reading every book that Tom Taylor's doing, like
Mm-hmm.
that, you can kind of take it or leave it, as much bandwidth as you have available. But I highly recommend it, and I'm very excited to see where this goes. So
Nice.
Interesting. Every time Tom Taylor jumps on a book, I'm just like, should I read it? He wrote one of my favorite X-Men runs of all time.
There you
Should
go.
I just jump on this thing? I don't know anything about Nightwing. I couldn't give a shit about Dick Grayson. Don't tell anybody that I said that. But you're selling me, and this the accolades for this book is selling me. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, Paul. I cut you off. I had to throw that in there. You know?
And I'm in the same boat. Like, I've never pulled this book. I know it gets a ton of praise, but it's one of those things. Like, I've already have so many of the other Batman books on my pull list. I was like, do I need Nightwing? But then every time I hear someone talk about this particular run, Tom Taylor on Nightwing, it's always like glowing reviews. So like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to sit down one point and just kind of binge this stuff. So yeah.
they've done some really fun stuff with the format. Like they did that
Yeah.
one book where it's like one continuous shot. They did the one issue where it's all like POV from Nightwing's point of view, and just little things like that. That whenever a comic book makes me turn it sideways, like whenever that first happened, I was reading Batman, the Snyder Capullo,
Yep.
and Capullo made me turn the book sideways and then upside down and then back the other way to like continue reading it. Just I love all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's what's cool is like, I mean, Nightwing is, he's a B-list character, like, but you kind of have that freedom. I love the fact that you, like, a creator that has a lot of cool ideas could be like, don't give me Batman, give me like 2 notches down and I can do what I want without much oversight. You know what I mean? You can be really creative in that way. That's kind of great. So yeah.
Man, I can't just pick up. You know what? Here's the thing. I'm barely reading X-Men. Maybe I just go full switch over to Batman books now.
Come to the DC side, the distinguished competition. Come on over.
I absolutely refuse. Paul, before you get to your pick, let me talk about what's on top of my pile pick.
Sure.
This week I am going to be reading a book that I picked up at the comic book shop. I know, like, guys, I keep saying I'm not buying a lot of new comic books. Every once in a while, you gotta just like, you add a little bit of a side dish to something. You're eating your meat and potatoes. Sometimes you gotta have a salad. This is my salad, okay? Maybe you should have a salad on top of the potatoes, and then you don't necessarily need the meat. I don't know, Paul. Maybe we could have a good conversation about that. But I picked up a book at the comic book shop specifically because I told myself, Mike, you normally would skip over this, and instead I decided not to, and that is The Singularity. This is an original graphic novel being published by Image Comics, written by Bear McCreary and Matt Groom, with art by multiple creators, Danilo Bayruth, John J. Pearson, Eleonora Carlini, Ramon K. Perez, Matthias Bergara, and Rod Reese. Like, crazy lineup on this book, and that's because overall, this is I realize, not after I bought it, but as I was reading the back, this is a graphic novel that goes with an album of the same name. So an album came out by Bear McCreary called The Singularity, and they put out this graphic novel that's kind of a representation companion piece to the album. And, I can kind of jive with that. It seems kind of cool. It's about like this character named Blue Eyes who can't stop being reborn. He tumbles from life to life, from one unthinkably strange universe to the next. The only constant that one way or another, everything that he learns to love is lost. But when Blue Eyes finally catches up to a mysterious figure he's seen reoccurring through his lives, he realizes he might just have a chance to escape his cursed immortality, or at the very least, exact revenge on it, or revenge for it. So, like, that sounds cool as a comic book. I'm like, yeah, like let's do a book about like a Groundhog's Day style sci-fi romp through the universe, and a multiverse as this character is being recreated. But there's an album to it. There is a 2-disc album that is attached to this that I decided to do a little bit of listening to. I listened to most of disc 1. This is Bear McCreary, who I'm not familiar with Bear McCreary's work, but they seem to be like a guitarist or a pretty talented musician.
Yeah, they're composers. So, that kick-ass theme from The Walking Dead, they composed that. They composed all the music from Masters of the Universe, the Netflix show. So, like, if you watch TV over the past 15 years, you probably heard a Bear McCreary song, or theme or something. So when I saw the notes, I was like, ooh, I wonder how much Mike knows about Bear McCreary. and how weird it is that this book,
that much.
but now that you say it's a companion piece to a disc, like it makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was like, I'm going to try this thing. I like Coheed and Cambria. I think I've talked about that recently on the show. I like their companion comics that they do as part of that, as scattershot as they can be. So I was like, you know what? Let's try this thing. Let's see what it's like. I haven't read any of it yet, but I listened to the album, and there are a bunch of featured artists on this, including a bunch of other composers who I think have worked with Bear McCreary. But Serge Tankian Tankian, I can never say Serge's last name, from System of a Down, as I just butchered this person's name, I'm so sorry. S.A. Jones, Rufus Wainwright, Lee Pace, like the actor, Lee Pace, Astra Sierra, Slash and Joe Satriani, and a bunch of other people. Like the names on this album, I was just like, what the hell is going on here? So I listened to it. And boy, it is an interesting mesh of a lot of different types of music, right? Like orchestral moments of like massive swelling paired with vocals that are like almost like reminds me of like Halo, which is very weird, but that whole thing. Plus you get like this System of a Down, like scrunchy, like screaming vocals every once in a while on this one track. There's like a chiptunes metal song that also has like these gospel vocals in the background or choral vocals. It's all over the place, and yet none of it feels out of place. It all seems to flow naturally, as it feels like the album, as you listen to it, is swelling as a story is being told. Like very, very interesting to listen to that. Maybe I went into it with a little bit of bias, knowing that it is like a concept album and that there's a comic book that goes along with it. But I liked what I listened to. It had a very like early 2000s kind of overly polished metal feel to it, but there's nothing wrong with that. It is a sound that reminds me of a specific era in music, because the production values are very, very high, but it does feel like produced with a capital P versus like a raw album that is kind of just being put out by musicians that are like, I don't know, just like dudes in a garage, right? So there's something there, right? And that's probably because Bear McCreary is a composer. So Danny, that makes a ton of sense now. But yeah, on the whole, though, it's a pretty cool album to listen to. I looked into Matt Groom. Matt Groom is a writer who has worked on some other books such as Ultraman over at Marvel Comics. They also worked on Inferno Girl Red, which I believe is a part of the Massive verse, and then Self-Made with Eduardo Figueroa, which was over at Image as well. So I think this is going to be interesting. I think seeing creators like Ramon K. Perez and Matthias Bergana and Rod Reese on this book totally pulled me in. So I was like, yeah, okay, those are incredible artists. I at least want to look at this. And then I paged through it, and it looks like a really, really cool book. So I was like, yeah, fuck it. Let's jump into this weird sci-fi thing. And yeah, so hopefully it's going to be good. I'm very excited to check it out. And I did the thing that I promised. I told people, we rant about this on the show all the time. Buy original graphic novels, stop complaining about miniseries when the original graphic novels come out. Put down the $17 and say, I would have bought 5 issues of this, or I could have bought a $17 collection. I did the thing. I bought the $17 collection. So fingers crossed. I hope it's really good.
Sounds interesting.
It looks
no doubt.
cool.
So yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of bonkers.
You said Slash, and I grew up listening to Guns N' Roses, and then you said Serge Tankian, and I was like, System of a Down is probably my favorite band ever. So,
Awesome. I mean, it's a cool album to listen to, even if you don't buy the comic. The album is at least like interesting to listen to. I had a good time listening this afternoon while I was prepping for the show. So, nice. I guess, Paul, what's on the top of your pile before I continue to rant about things that I clearly don't know anything about? So,
well, I mean, speaking of music, I have a music-related book as well. This is something I picked up at C2E2. Mike and I stopped at the Silver Sprocket booth, and I really had to restrain myself from buying everything they had. Silver Sprocket is like maybe the coolest publisher going right now. So I picked up a few things, and this is a book I remember it being solicited. So I grabbed a copy there at the booth, and it's called The Secret History of Black Punk, Record Zero. It's by Reagan Buchanan, and it's what the title implies. It's basically a history of punk rock performed and written by Black musicians, African-American musicians, and it's less a comic and more an illustrated history. There are some panels, there are some sequences that are illustrated, but it's like you're just flipping through the book, and it's just like amazing sort of like classic, punk flyer artwork combined with the descriptions of the artists, and it covers the whole gambit. Like it goes all the way back to the 1930s and 40s with Sister Roberta Tharpe, who's a gospel singer and electric guitar player who was a huge influence on the early rock and roll scene of Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash. Then it goes through all of these sort of like classic 70s and 80s punk bands like Death, Bad Brains, ESG, Jean Bouvier, bands I'm all familiar with, and then up to today, like post-punk experimental music that I've never heard of. So on one hand, it's a cool history of that stuff, and also it's a guide for me to find new music, which I'm always excited about. So I remember when this was solicited, and like that sounds cool. So I was glad to find a copy and buy it at C2E2. Now I have no excuse but to read it. So that is The History of Black Punk, Record Zero. Looks really cool. If you are interested in the history of music, history of punk rock, this seems like a cool book to check out.
See, it seems essential, is what it sounds
right,
like
exactly.
to me.
Yeah, I mean, because I've read plenty of histories of, I mean, other than comics, the other things I read normally are like music biographies. So I've read plenty of oral histories about punk rock. Obviously, Please Kill Me by Legs McNeil is the definitive punk rock text, but it doesn't include all those bands. Like it talks about Bad Brains, but it doesn't talk about Death or Sister Roberta Tharpe. So like, I feel like there's a whole section of punk music that for whatever reason is overlooked in the history of the telling of that history. So the fact that Reagan Buchanan took a whole book to like, hey, let's focus specifically on these bands that kind of get overshadowed in the history of punk rock. So it's really cool to have this book as a testament to their influence, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been meaning to. I bought a copy of this a short while back before C2E2. Been meaning to sit down and read this, but this is a good reminder that I've got all those damn Silver Sprocket books. I mean, this is the thing. So you go to a convention sometimes, and like you're just like, oh, I'm gonna try this book out because you get all hyped up, right? You're like, I got money to spend. It's burning in my pocket, and you buy from a small publisher, and then you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna buy everything that this publisher does, especially when it's someone like a PEOW or a Silver Sprocket, or a Fantagraphics, right? You get on their newsletter, and suddenly you're just like, this is all I read now. That's it,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No, it happened to me. I mean, yeah, the other book I brought from Silver Sprocket was that American Cult book about the history of religious cults in America, and that book was fantastic. So it's such a good book. So
that was almost my pick for this week. It was like, I was very close to picking that.
Does it come with a form to join one at the end?
There are a couple
the
of
end is a survey.
I got some idea. All right,
Yeah.
This seems appealing. All right.
The end of the book has a survey, and it tells you which cult you would be most compatible with. It's like
it sorts you. It
online
sorts you
quiz.
into a cult. Like
yes,
it just sorts you into a cult. Which one should you be in?
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
right,
this is my big announcement. Now I'm a Branch Davidian. So hey.
Oh wow! Congrats, Paul.
Congrats, Paul.
Do you get special hats or jackets, or is it just it's the whole life
I
of
don't
suffering?
want to. Yeah, I can't tell you.
You got to read the book. You got to read the book to know.
Smart. Well, before we wrap up today's show, one of the things we were talking about offline before we got into recording was we kind of wanted to show off some of the weird little things that we have. So this is primarily for you Twitch people who are at home, but we'll try to describe stuff for the audio listeners out there. But Paul, Danny, and myself kind of grabbed some of the weird things in our collection or odd things that we have, and so we're going to talk about them and show them off here for folks that are live, just because it's kind of goofy, it's kind of fun. Like I think a couple weeks back I talked about, I was trying to find this copy that I own. I know that I own it. It's somewhere, of the Amory Wars in Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, or the third album, whatever, I can't remember what it's called, but it was originally sold like in Hot Topic. It was like a graphic novel of the Amory Wars by Claudio Sanchez, and it's like the most unspoken thing of this band. Like they don't mention this anymore. It's out of canon. They rewrote the entire comic and reprinted it through Boom. I know I have a copy of it somewhere. It's just a matter of finding it. And I was going to try to find it for today, and I, for the life of me, cannot find it. But I found some other stuff. But before I get into what I grabbed, I think Paul has the craziest item. So yeah, Danny, sure. I want you to go first.
Okay. Now I will say, Mike, every time you bring up Emery Wards, I think the funnest part is that somebody in the Discord always goes like, "Oh, I thought it was Armory Wars. I guess not."
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing, because it's always like somebody, I guess, that it's new to it or whatever. So
yeah.
All right. So I dug deep, and I wanted to bring in something that was Batman, but I think maybe a little weird. Okay. Maybe something you guys haven't seen, or maybe our audience hasn't seen. So when the Dark Knight movie came out, obviously they released some special edition Blu-rays, and at midnight I went to my local Blockbuster. That's how long ago this was. and they had this baby right here. I hope you guys can see it. It is
Danny, I can only see a reflection. It looks, is it a motorcycle?
It's the Bat Pod. Yeah. Maybe that looks
Oh,
better.
I can see it now that you've moved back. It is.
Yep.
Is it the Dark Knight Batmobile thickest wheel on a motorcycle you've ever seen bike?
Yeah, it's the Bat Pod with like the DVD case in the back.
Nice.
I don't think this was exclusive to Blockbuster, but that's where I bought it because if I want to spend a stupid amount of money on a Blu-ray that's just coming out, it's gonna be on this. But I've never opened it, so this has been sealed in just a part of my room for almost 16 years now, which is insane.
Wild.
That's bonkers.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but I think the funniest part really was that I got this at a Blockbuster and not like I don't know where you buy
not at a
now.
GameStop, not at Spencer's. You got it at Blockbuster.
Now that all stores are doing away with their physical media, I don't know where we're gonna get stuff like this, but yeah, I thought that was cool. I mean, it's my favorite film ever, so it's really
You gotta have it.
I have too many versions of that trilogy. I have like entirely too many. Every time they release a new one,
gotta get it.
I just have to get it. So.
They see, this is the thing. They keep releasing them because they know people are like you and they're gonna buy it. You know, that's Warner Brothers. They're just taking you for a ride, or Discovery Media, whatever the hell they're called now.
Yeah, it's Christopher Nolan's like, oh, Daniel needs more Blu-rays.
Well, I have something here, but I just realized I have something even more ridiculous. So I'm gonna go pick it up really quick. 1 second.
Sure.
Danny, Paul, entertain yourselves for just a moment.
Yeah, here we are.
I had a question. So I watched this, and Paul, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I don't know how much insight you'll have into this, but I see a guy on TikTok that sells potatoes in like England or something.
Okay.
Like baked potatoes with cheese and stuff. But then on the latest video, I saw that he put, normally it's like beans or chili that goes on top of the potato, but somebody asked for tuna, like tuna salad on it.
On a potato?
And like it's like a baked potato with a bunch of cheese and then tuna salad on top, like tuna and mayo.
Well, yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't. The whole thing about tuna and cheese in this country, I don't understand. That is one of the idiosyncrasies from Americans, and I guess the UK that I don't understand at all.
That's when I still ate meat and dairy, I would go down on a tuna melt every now and again. Like a tuna melt sandwich would hit the spot every now and again. Very rarely, but so I can understand that. But the baked potato, like I don't understand that.
Yeah.
This is not about comic books. What are you guys doing?
We were filming in we didn't want any. We have a rule here, and it's no dead air.
I see.
Yeah.
Listen, that's okay. I found the thing. The thing. We're keeping all this in the episode. I don't even know what it was. I wasn't listening. I had to get up and go grab something off of a shelf because I realized that it was way up on a shelf, like in a place that it's invisible now because I see it every day. I don't know if I showed this to you guys before, but I have a copy. I have this World War Hulk, Immortal Hulk, giant size Funko. Like it's as big as my head.
Incredible.
I did not buy this, for the record. This was given to me by my old comic book shop in northern New Jersey. Shout out Eastside Mags. One day I came in, I bought my stack of comics and graphic novels because at this point I'm like mostly buying collected editions and graphic novels and stuff. And at the time I was catching up on Meg and Mog and Delicious in Dungeon. I needed like hard copies of a bunch of other stuff. So I was spending a bit of money with them. And I walked in one day and they just said, "Oh yeah, this is for you too." And I don't know why, but I own this Immortal Hulk, humongous Funko Pop, still in the box, completely like beat up like box. I think that they must have like lost this behind the back of a shelf and then found it and said, just like give it to the next guy that buys comics. And it happened to be me.
Lucky
so
you.
that's my weird thing. But I will show off one other thing that I have because when I bought it, I thought it was going to be like, I collect some figures. I'm not like a huge action figure person. I collect a handful of things, unless it's Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. Like I do have a lot of Vegeta action figures in general. There's an entire shelf that I have dedicated to those figures. But I bought a My Hero Academia figure because I like this one character. My Hero Academia, not everyone's a cup of tea, and I completely understand. I stopped reading, right? Like I fell off of it. but I fell off after one of my favorite characters ever died. I didn't stop reading because this character died. It was a great death. It's like the way that a character should go out in the series. And that is Twice, one of the villains. During the villain arc, spoilers,
I thought
character
you were
dies.
The season just started, and I thought you were going to spoil it for me, and I was like, oh, no.
No. I think this is pretty old news.
It already happened, yeah.
But I bought a statue that I thought was going to be like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 inches wrong. I don't know how to convert centimeters over to inches in my head. So when I bought this from the Bamco or Famco Bandai website, like from their website, it's all in millimeters and centimeters and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy this. It's going to go on my shelf. And I got this massive action figure, this massive statue of Twice that sits on my shelf. And boy, oh boy, this thing takes up so much room. And it's really cool because like Twice looks awesome. He's like doing this cool pose. For those of you at home listening, he's doing this cool pose. And he's doing the Twice thing, which I love this character. But man, this thing is big. This is like the size of a G.I. Joe action figure. And it's almost too much compared to all the like, I don't know, 7, 8 inch figures that I have. So I don't know. I just got this on my shelf and it's going to sit right next to my giant Hulk that I have. This humongous immortal Hulk that I can't believe is in my house. So that's what I got.
Yeah.
Paul, I think we should get to yours and wrap up our episode with one of the coolest items I've ever seen.
I mean, I have a lot of weird shit because like I love going to antique stores. And one of my things when I go to antique stores is to find anything that was released in the like Batman, Adam West era. So I got a bunch of random stuff of that. And that's not that crazy. But what I decided to show for this, my show and tell item I have, something I found in my local record store about a decade ago. Because obviously the other thing I collect other than comics is records. And this is from 1972, The Amazing Spider-Man, a rock-omic. So it's a record.
Paul, you got to pull this out in front of your microphone so we can see just like, okay. We got to see this entire beautiful cover. So
you got John Romita artwork there, Amazing Spider-Man, a rock-omic. The back cover's got, the Lizard and the Vulture, Green Goblin. Doctor Strange pops up, so cool. Kingpin from Beyond the Grave. And what's great is that when you listen to it, the songs sort of tell a story. So each song, there's a comic strip like in the inner cover that John Romita drew. And it's great. Like, the artwork's incredible.
Way.
It's not great musically. I remember the funny story is that I had this record for years and like I was like, I'm not going to keep this. I'm just going to I found out one of my friends, their like 7-year-old son was really into Spider-Man. I was like, oh, I'll give you this record. I'm just going to give it a quick listen, before I give it to her. And the first song, I think the chorus of the song is like, Peter Parker is a sex machine to all the chicks. It's like, I guess this isn't for a 7-year-old. And also that's not true. Come on. That's like way out of character. But fun fact for anyone, maybe no one but me will appreciate this, is Buddha Records, which is the record label that, it's like a bubblegum record label. Captain Beefheart was on Buddha Records. So was Love and Spoonful. It says all tunes performed by the Web Spinners, which there's no credits other than that. But I found out all lead vocals are by Ron Dante, who Ron Dante, of course, was the voice of Archie in the Archies. So that's another comic book connection. So there you go. A rock comic. I wonder why they never did a follow-up.
Here's the thing that Paul, I know you love this album so much. You love the cover art so much. Did you know that you can buy an Alex Ross recreation of this for $195?
Amazing. Well, I bought this record for... Go ahead.
It is this. I'm reading this now on the Alex Ross website. The Amazing Spider-Man rock comic is an Alex Ross illustration that pays tribute to the art of legendary comic artist John Romita Sr., reinterpreted by Ross in his photorealistic style as the original cover. And it's actually an entire album. It's the whole album reprinted.
Wow.
But they're only selling it at it's a New York City Comic-Con special or Comic-Con exclusive special. They're only selling 100 of them. Wow. So if you want it, you just let your boy know, who's probably going to be at New York City Comic-Con. I can get you your favorite artist's cover of this album that you love so much.
Time. I'll stick with the copy I bought here in Grand Rapids for $3.99. I think I'll stick with my copy here.
Okay,
I guess the Singularity is kind of a rock comic.
Exactly. So I guess the concept still stands. Like, people are still making rock comics.
Man, totally. Absolutely. Now I feel like I got to go find the vinyl copy of The Singularity, and I got to put it on my non-existent, vinyl record player.
I have a few other ones, because I mean, they did that. They would have like records where it's like someone narrating a story. Like I've got a few Superman comics, the same thing. I've got a cool Justice League record where it's like somebody wrote theme songs for random Justice League members. The song about Metamorpho slaps. Like that song rules. So if you look up that Metamorpho song, I'll have to pull my copy of that for the next time we do this. I've got a bunch of weird comic book related vinyl in my collection, obviously.
Okay. This sounds like a good piece of our eventual maybe secret show that we may be doing later this year.
Oh, okay.
Keep your eyes peeled in July, folks. That's all I'll say. But with that, I think that is where we should wrap up this week's episode. This is really cool. Danny, thank you for reminding me that we should do this, because it's very, very fun. I was going to talk about my my guilty copy of the Batman: The Killing Joke that I own, that I maybe accidentally bullied a friend into giving me, thinking that she stole it from me. And then I found my copy, and then I said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I mail it back to you?" And she said, "I didn't even like that comic. You can just keep it." And I said, "Okay."
Fair enough.
So I just heard you have 2 copies of that.
I have, I have one copy of this. I have another copy that's like a thicker, soft back edition, and I have a hardcover edition. Listen, at one point I thought I didn't own this book, and I kept going to comic shops and going, "Oh, I'll get The Killing Joke. I guess I don't own that one." And then come home and I would freaking have it. So like, told myself I'll never ever buy a collected edition of a Batman book ever again, unless I'm at home looking at my library and I know for sure I haven't bought it yet. So. But that's going to wrap up our show, everybody. Thank you all for watching live on Twitch and for listening live. We appreciate it so much. If you're listening to this at home, next time, keep an eye out on the Discord. We'll be live on Twitch probably sometime in, I'm going to guess August, maybe. But nonetheless, I want to say thank you all for listening. You're all fantastic human beings. Xander is the cool editor guy who makes this show happen every week. Thank you to Paul and Danny for being here on the episode with me and hanging out this late at night. Thank you to Kara for proof listening. Thank you again to everybody live on Twitch. You are wonderful, amazing people. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.